Hey everyone, it's Karen at Worldschooling Central and welcome back to Worldschooling Central Spotlight, where I interview worldschooling families and have them share their experiences with you. Today I'm excited to introduce you to the Kaponay family, a family of 4 from Australia who have been worldschooling since 2011. Their twins are now all grown up and they have plenty of stories to tell, so watch this to find out more. 10 years ago, the Kaponay family made a conscious choice to embrace some major changes in their lives as a catalyst to creating a new way of living. Since then, their adventures have taken them to over 50 countries on 6 continents with no signs of stopping anytime soon. When their twins were just 8 years of age, they ventured out into the world, leaving their normal lives behind, becoming world schoolers, well before worldschooling became popular. Today, the twins are 18 and have experienced adventures that most kids could only dream of. Their family story is one made up of journeys they have taken, the lives they have touched, and the way they live every day with intention. They have a strong desire to share their experience with others and support their adventures, helping others to realise, experience, and truly live their very best lives every day. With so much experience, the Kaponay family are a wealth of information for new worldschooling families, so let's meet them now.
We're George and Bobby Kaponay, and we have 2 children, twin children, boy, girl, Lolika and Leka. They turned 18 this year, and last year. My goodness, it's already gone so fast.
And when did you start worldschooling?
We've been travelling world schooling since 2011. So we're now coming up on our 9th year of continuous travel and adventure.
And so why did you start worldschooling?
The seeds of that actually started back in about 2008 when we really started to notice things in our relationship, in our family life. There was just something, as Bobby said, intuitively we were feeling there was something that wasn't serving the needs of where we needed to go to. And we felt flat. We felt like our working life, our sedentary life really wasn't taking us in the direction that we were being called to. And that's when we started listening to those, to those calling, that voice, and having those discussions. It started with us taking our children out of school, and then lo and behold, just 3 weeks after we made that decision and we started, I was made redundant at work. And it all started, all the answers that we were stuck on started coming. And
more questions.
And more questions,
Yeah.
Of course, absolutely. But we decided to follow that, for probably the first times, in our lives, we really listened to that inner voice and said, okay, we're really going to make a go at this. And that sort of naturally all flowed into what eventually became worldschooling, because traveling was always really a part of what drew us together, even as a couple, before we even had our children. So that was, I suppose, the natural onflow effect of questioning the things that are really, meaningful and happening in our lives today.
It all started with just taking them out of school.
Yeah.
Taking their Kamalika out of school and just feeling that need that this is not right, that we need to do our own, seeing how they thrived on just following their curiosity is not an actual curriculum as such. So, and because we naturally loved to travel and just take off on adventures, like we'd get in a car and we'd end up, saying, oh, let's go to Sydney, visit Grandpa. But then we kept going and it turned into like a 3 or 4 month adventure of just driving around in Australia. So it just taking these trips, I guess, and then realizing that we're not limited to being stuck in the one place. So, and it just naturally evolved of us moving it into international zones and international areas and just keeping it going.
So how would you define worldschooling?
I think that's a key to defining what worldschooling is, what calls to you? What is that voice, that inner voice that calls to you? And there sort of is this, and I'll sort of put it out there, is this like thing about worldschooling, like some people think because they've been doing it as long as us, they were the ones that dreamt world schooling up, that they invented it, But world schooling has been happening since, since I think the dawn of time and the dawn of the way man led their life as semi-nomads, We're talking about it as if it's something wow and new, but it's actually been going on for centuries and eons. You think about the Mongols, they, have a yurt and they go from place to place to place and pretty much, enjoy the surrounds, the experiences, the world. In fact, taking a very indigenous approach to things, being caretakers. So what is world schooling? I think world schooling is that acting on that sense of adventure, seeing the world as a place in which we can all learn and grow from. And if you want to do that in whichever format you want to do it in, whether that's, you're living at home 9 months of the year and 3 months of the year you're traveling, or even 11 months of the year, 1 month of the year you're traveling, if you have that mindset, to grow and expand your vision and view of the world and humanity and what we're capable of, then I reckon you're a world schooler. And it doesn't matter whether you've been doing it for 11 years like us or you're just starting it.
So when did you first discover world schooling?
I suppose we were already world schooling like 4 years or something like that. And we're like, there's this thing called world schooling. Oh, well, that's what we've been doing for the last 4 years. And so, that was probably, maybe around about that, 2014 area, when we started noticing there's more and more families posting about their adventures. And then suddenly there was a world schooling group or whatever on Facebook, and then the summit where we met you, that was the first formal sort of gathering of other families. But that was something we've been doing already for 3 or 4 years by that time.
And how did friends and family react when you started world schooling?
It was pretty radical from the perspective of the people in our lives around us. What do you mean you're giving up your job? Are you crazy? You've got a great career. You could do this in a couple of years or whatever. I mean, what
do you mean the children? You're ruining their lives.
Yeah.
What future are they going to have?
What do you mean you're taking them out of school and and we had to, of course we had to say to people, oh, maybe it's just for a year or something, just to quieten them.
And what do they think about your lifestyle now?
They're still a little lost, I think, because they're still living the same lives. I mean, here we are. I've had the occasion to speak to one of my colleagues who I worked with like literally 12 years ago, and she's doing exactly the same thing 12 years later. So to them, this is, they're still like, wow, you've done that. But it's the very, very same sort of thing. So if you keep putting the same input in, you are going to keep getting the same output out. And a lot of people have become used to that comfort, and comfort is the equivalent of cancer, or the concept of comfort is the equivalent of cancer to us as human beings, because we become set in one way or one train of thinking, and we never allow the space for open development, for something that is different, for something that can come. So yeah, the people that are still living here, a lot of them, not all of them, because there are many who are starting to hear this call of, there could be something different out there. But a lot of them are still saying, well, when are you going to change? What's okay.
Change, but when
are you going to come back? When are you going to settle down? When are you going to, really see sense? So to the people out there who are contemplating this, yes, one of the biggest challenges you'll probably face is to those people who love you the most, your family and everything, who don't want you to leave, who don't want you to go out on that big adventure of life that is out there waiting for all of us. And they'll unfortunately use every tactic, element and insecurity and fear within them to try and put the fear of God in you, so to speak, and prevent you from going out there. But hold true to that voice, and you'll find there's some wonderful adventures are waiting for you out there.
So how do you maintain your relationships with each other?
in this whole thing, and we've seen this with other families who actually have gone out on the road there, and there have been some hiccups for some families like that, is that keeping an open mind space and having a really good opportunity to communicate about things on a daily basis is really, really a critical part of world schooling, because anything that's misunderstanding at home gets amplified to the factor of X when you're out on the road, and that's why really great communication and what some of the things that we do is help families create their own family story that they can live, is a really, really important factor of getting a shared and common vision of what it is that may have the potential to draw you on further, because that is a vital aspect of what it is. And for us in the very beginning, as we said, we were really happy to be spontaneous and go with the flow and all of those sorts of things. That might not work for other families, and that's why it's really, really important. Each family's world schooling experience is going to be a completely unique and beautiful experience. Yes, it might share elements with other families in common, and that's what will draw you to other families, but to have a common understanding, to create a common story based on the direction that you guys are all going in, can really make it a far more enriching experience.
And what were your initial plans for educating your children?
Before we started actually long-term travel, and it was actually the first few weeks of homeschooling where they wanted, because they were so used to this, because they finished grade 2, and especially our daughter, she was so studious, and she was reading way ahead, and just the reading and writing was her main focus. So she loved the setting of structure in the day thing, and then we'd set up topics of interest and that sort of thing, and but after a few days, even already, we realized that it was taking a natural course of curiosity into questions into how they were thinking and what interested them, and then that realization just we were feeling that we just had to follow that, just follow their natural curiosity, and not to worry about how they're going to do maths wise or any other these
structured topics,
structured ways, so just to follow that naturally, and they will learn all the information that needs to come to them will come to them, and the situations, the circumstances will arise as it's needed. Whatever they needed to learn, they will learn.
And in truth, there are so many ways, and I can understand the fears that many people out there might have in relation to answering this question, Karen, because it's a big question, because we've been so conditioned to the way we come to understand what schooling is, especially they hammer it into you as parents, curriculum, and we have this curriculum, and we have Professor so-and-so who's figured it out, and he's the foremost expert on well, it's destructuring our understanding of what it is to be able to actually learn. More importantly, for us, it was what it is to create free thinking, fully empowered young people who are going to take a full stakeholders right in the family process. And as we went, we got more and a greater appreciation and understanding for how important it is to raise free thinking people who have the full empowerment of our family, not like we're the parents dominating and imposing our view and vision of the world, but we are here potentially as mentors, guides to a way in which we can also incorporate their vision and views of the world that is around us, and how can we actually view that together. Over the course of the journey, what happened was that we were led by those moments that Bobby said, those natural moments that flowed in natural flow with the life that we were leading, wherever we were leading it at the time, of in the moment inspiration-led learning. And that encouraged them to grow in confidence as human beings, and eventually to become our mentors and our guides in this journey of learning that we are taking together. And it also deconstructed that whole idea that we had in our heads that, that we were taught, okay, so your schooling's done, now you have to school your children. No, in fact, we were able to throw the yoke of that off and say, we are students like you in this world, in this journey of life. And in this kind of learning environment, it opens the framework and the possibilities for everybody to share information in a way in which it's meaningful for everybody, in a way in which it actually opens up your mindset for the possibilities that are out there, and to make it a continual and ongoing journey that flows into the natural life of your family and where you need to go as a family.
And what tools did you use to support their learning?
We started off in the beginning, didn't we, with they were already doing things like Kumon when they were in school, so they were doing math and English in those respects. Then there were, that when we started, it was the rise of online tools and things like Khan Academy and Mathletics here in Australia, and a few different other things that were there. But and also, as we went along this journey, we came into contact with many different communities around the world where homeschooling is banned, and they were looking at various different methods and academies that would accommodate that would measure up with the government's version of that, like schools in the States like Clonlara and all of these that offered various different approaches. But I mean,
for us, it was the national parks. It was more actually what we found the best learning that happened was out in nature. So we'd go on long hikes, and the conversations that it brought up, the questions, all of that. That was the main
inspiration.
That were the gems, in how it all sort of how they were inspired and.
Yeah, but if you were to say, like, some of the people who need like the categories or whatever, like you asked, we went from very rapidly from a homeschooling to an unschooling we transitioned from homeschooling to unschooling to completely if you want to put a label on it, all right, I'll call it in the moment inspiration-led learning and the development of free-thinking individuals. And yes, we used all the tools and facilities that were on the internet, but we also, as Bobby said, were led by the natural flow, ebb and flow of what was happening in our daily family life. And that became a super guide to, our children really finding the things that they were really passionate and inspired by, which, as our daughter ended up, at the age of 13, writing her own novel and having it published by the time she was 14. She's in the process of finishing her second novel. It was published in, Hungary by a major publisher. Our son started his own, travel concierge company as a result of the passions that he went. And the thing is here that this is an ongoing, this sort of learning allows for flexibility to continually develop and continually grow, in terms of the things that inspire you. So it's not as if you need to get from A to B, and use, or X, A to Z and use B to X to get yourself there. There's ways in which you can go from F and then tomorrow you can go, all the way to Z if you want, or you can choose G. And it's as long as it actually serves what is going on in the life of your children, the life of your family, because we feel strongly that that's what's going to bring them not only the most satisfaction, but also find the things that are going to be really meaningful and productive to society and pay them, to the world and to the world and to provide an income as well, to live off. So that all flows into that, and people don't need to worry about, in our view, at least, universities and all of these, but they can do all of those things if they want.
And I'd love to know, how did the needs of your kids change when they became teens?
The community gatherings have really helped Reka and Lolika to strengthen friendships, and also getting actually involved with the local communities where we are, is
that's a big thing.
That's really helped. Like, they've really developed close friendships in where we've stayed longer, and recently now back in Sydney, they with their
I grew up in Sydney.
Life-saving.
Yeah, I grew up in Sydney, and I always, they of course they visited Sydney and all of those sorts of things, but we'd never really lived in Sydney. And over the summer now, we lived in Sydney for a few months, and that gave them the opportunity. I was always shared with them the stories of when I was young, and community service was always a big thing in my mind as well. And one of the really great ways that we enjoyed that, living next to the beach, because I grew up on Bondi Beach, was being a member of the Surf Life Saving Association, and being a member of Bondi Surf Club, the world's oldest surf club. Don't let anybody tell you that the other ones were around first. We've actually historically documented it. So, and it was really great just to be with friends, and it was a very positive and reinforcing, way to spend time together. And surf clubs have really evolved over the years now to have a very, very strong community effect, and they really experienced this as another way. But as Bobby said, they made friends everywhere we went. Where we stayed longer, we made an effort to get involved with the community, and they made friends that way. And they've got friends all around the world now, and they've really, really enjoyed being a part of some of the Surf Life Saving community, and contributing in a way that they feel empowered and made new friends. So
really, I think, sorry to interrupt, it's just what's coming to me is that really listening to what they get excited about,
yes.
And being involved, getting yourself involved in that as a partner,
yes.
As a family, full
yes.
What's the word you use, like full stakes?
Full stakeholders in the whole partnership.
And just listening to that, paying attention to what they're really excited about, and following on those lines to see what choices, what possibilities there
Absolutely.
are in that.
That goes back to the things that we're working on. When you do empower them and really, absolutely, really, really listen to what's going on, and you have free thinking stakeholders in the process, they're going to tell you what they need, and you can be there for that to bridge that thing. But getting involved with community makes a big difference in everything, and that's the Worldschooling community, the events that happen, the local communities, and really getting out there and listening to what they need, and that's going to make all the difference, and then it won't be that hard.
What are the biggest challenges you've faced along the way?
At the beginning, we were pretty fearless, because we got the sniff of hey, this is the direction we should go in, and then we went in that direction, like full on. We thought, this is the direction that really is calling to us. And every time we came to a roadblock or something, just leaving that space open, there was an answer. And so we got the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step, without having to see the big picture. And so in that respect, we got very used to these challenges coming, but always just being able to let go of fears and insecurities, and then seeing the answers or possibilities to the next step that we did. So it was that part. And then that's evolved over the course of these years. Of course, we've had some tough challenges that have made us think about certain things, but nothing that has ever been overwhelming or too overwhelming for us not to want to take that next step. So to people who are out there maybe potentially listening to this, and who are actually listening to that inner voice, we'd encourage you to keep listening to it and act on it. Yeah, trust it and act on it. You won't be disappointed to a point where you're devastated and lost and have nowhere else to go. For us in the first few years, traveling the world and finding our feet and finding the most cost-effective ways to live, they were probably the biggest challenges for us, and how we merged those with the types of work that we wanted to do. And over the course of this 8 years, it's become the evolution of how we actually live as a family is actually how we make our money as well. So the challenge was how to align those two things, how to live in a manner that is actually authentic and meaningful and is actually the product of what you produce and can create in this world that provides a living for you. So they're the two things we've worked or invested most of our energies into, being in alignment with each other, because we find if those things are out of alignment, that's when you can actually find the challenges. So if you think that world schooling is going to be the big answer to everything, like throwing everything behind, and yet you still carry those burdens, those energetic and psychological burdens with you, then you could be, schooling on Mars and still it won't address those things. So for us, world schooling and the challenges that were really a reflection of the journey of development of us as a family as well, and how we could actually work on all of those sorts of things in the learning process that would then bring into alignment, the way we're living, the way we're earning, the way we're doing all of those things are all in alignment together.
So how do you afford to world school?
The creation of ventures and businesses that we together as a family now develop and are working on as a family of four, still traveling the world and learning and enjoying all of the adventures.
And the big question, what does it cost to world school?
We lived in Asia for 5 months last year on less than, with all our rent, travel, expenses, everything, for less than $6,000. So just over $1,000 a month. And we were eating out every single night, almost every single night. I mean, we started with a very small, lump sum or something like that, that we generated together. It was less than $25,000 US dollars. And that ran out pretty quickly, in the first sort of 6 months. We were sort of driving around and it was in that first 6 months, because we didn't really know how to do things more cost effectively. And as we traveled along that journey, we realized just what our needs were in terms of a family and what we wanted to see and what we wanted to do. And we were able to massively reduce the cost of our outgoings, and therefore we're able to pick up a bit of work here and there and everything, and fund our travels. But we traveled on the basis of massively reducing our costs. So here in Australia, when we were living on over $150,000 worth of expenses a year, and we got it in under the first year to under 30,000 US dollars, and then even less, to like 25,000 US dollars. And for 5 or 6 years, that's the way we lived. We actually lived on spending less than 25,000. So we didn't have to do much to get that $25,000 in, but we were on a journey of learning and growing, and we were doing things that was the intention for us to bring into the world. And that did eventuate, in terms of the connections we had, the experiences we had, the partnerships that we formed, and then the businesses that we did end up creating, that are now taking us as a family in what I would say is probably the second phase of our journey of world schooling. Because we've talked about, and we said, we're not quite yet ready to settle down, like we're coming up to 9th year, and I mean, we're in the 9th year, and and we've seen a lot of families when they hit year 10, it seems like, well, that's it, we want to settle back down again. And maybe that also has to do with children reaching that more mature teenage years, where they want to have that interaction with the children in their own country and all of those sorts of things. But yeah, those are the things that sort of have developed for us. And now we're hitting the second phase where we now have adult children who, because we've done this journey together, they want to create businesses and ventures with us that are still in harmony and alignment with this way we're living, and are starting to branch out to help other families that are potentially not so much in the world schooling space, but families who are living in that sedentary space of life, as to how they can have deeper and closer connections as families.
And so what tips and tricks do you have for saving money while traveling?
There's things like house sitting. There's been really, really good ways you can reduce the cost of that. But you can also, we've done things like we did, exchange for work exchange for accommodation, or you can actually, find really, really cost-effective ways of staying if you go to real estate agents in certain areas and certain parts of the world. Like, for example, last year we were in Vietnam, and we spent 2 months living in Vietnam, and we were in Hoi An. And, Hoi An's this touristy mecca where it's beautiful. It's got the beach, it's got the old town, and people are charging stupidly ridiculous amounts, for an Airbnb there, something like $1,000, for 2 weeks. And we went to the local real estate agent. We did a little bit more digging, and it just so happened there was this 5-bedroom house in this little beautiful vegetable village, which all the tourists come to visit on a daily basis, called Tra Hue. And we found out a house there for, $700 a month. And and we had it for 2 months. And so you've got to go outside of the what you see on the internet. Now, Son has become I hate to use the word, but an expert at it. You have to really research, and he's found the most cost-effective ways for us to find places to live. If it's not house sitting or something like that, it's finding the really most what locals are paying, or a little bit more. Like, for example, in Spain, we lived in a former apart hotel on a place in a village that was on what's called the Costa Calida in Spain. And our rent was €300 a month. And our expenses, we had a vegetable market that was only like a couple of kilometres away from where we lived. We'd walk there every Saturday morning, and no joke, for €50, we'd come back with 2 massive backpacks filled to the brim of fresh produce that was just beautifully grown, like things like tomatoes for $1 a euro, or 50 cents, 50 euro cents a kilo, capsicum, like peppers, all of these other things. So you've got to find some of these gems of places to live where you want to have an experience, and it's not so expensive to live. And then there's much cheaper ways to travel as well. So on flights and things like that, we never travel with your full service airlines. They're just way too costly. And sure, it might add an extra 20, 40 hours to your trip from getting somewhere, but we utilize those opportunities to go out and have a look at the places that we're visiting. But we're saving at least $700, $800, $1,000, $2,000 on each airfare, which means the difference between the 4 of us traveling around isn't $15,000, $20,000 in airfares. It's more like $5,000 or $6,000 in airfares. And last year we had 26 flights, believe it or not, and it was all under $6,000 or $7,000. So that's the difference. It's really looking at all of the ways in which you can reduce your spending, in which you can travel to places when it's not a major festival or something that's going on, and that you can actually find modes of transport. One last example, like we were going on a book tour for Reiko, which was starting in the UK, and we were going to hire a car, and they wanted something like a $2,500 deposit for a few days worth of hire, and we didn't have the money at the time. And so Lolika went on Gumtree in Scotland and found us a car where we bought a car for £450, travelled all around Scotland, all around the UK, all around Wales, got to London and sold it for £550, 3 weeks later. So there's so many different ways that you can really reduce it. My invitation to people is to actually just get out there and do a little bit more research, and you'll find the ways, that are out there to live more cost effectively.
And so what's next in your world schooling adventures?
We still want to do more spontaneous things, bring back more of the spontaneity of our travels, so places we haven't been yet and would really love to visit and experience. So there's some of that in there, places possibly like Alaska or Northern Europe, or eventually I really personally would love to get to Mongolia and spend some time there. And
the things that we're doing together as a family. So our world schooling journey continues, even though our children have finished the formal years of schooling. We've rolled that into what we're doing as a family and the family businesses that we're creating. And we have seen that our world schooling journey now is about how can we build a bridge between those people who are currently living a life where you just said, to those people thinking, I can't do this, to inviting people. Maybe they're not going to go on a 10-year world schooling adventure, but maybe what they're going to do is really question the way they're living, currently in their worlds, and what is it that they could do to change? What's that one big thing that's calling to them? And that's the sort of thing that we're working on building at the moment, a way in which we can help families who are currently living in suburbia in the States, in Australia, in the UK, in Europe, and how can they take that big step out there to a much wider world. And that might mean, they're still working and living in the same neighborhoods and all of those sorts of things, but with a changed mindset, with a mindset where everything is possible and the possibilities could be limitless for them. So we're helping to create the resources, tool sets, people who can actually help them with those sorts of experiences, also bringing our own story and our own experience into play to help with that journey. And also we are working on helping families really deepen that connection in this modern world that we're living in, which seems to be taking people in so many different separate directions. And we're doing that through a number of different things. We've got a few things that are happening through our retreats, our family retreats, which that do differ from just say the experience of a wonderful experience of family travel, traveling together and going to new places. We actually are taking 8 families and taking them to places where they can transplant themselves and have a full 2-week immersive experience in how they can address those burning questions that you're talking about, really contemplate them, ask them, and through a framework of learning together, both adults and children integrated, come to a mind space and create, that family story that we were talking about in a framework that's ongoing, even when they go back to where they live on a daily basis. And we're doing this sometime. We've done it last year in Bali and in Transylvania, which is a really spectacular experience. And we were even aiming, for something close to home for some of the people in the US, in Oregon, and in between that, some weekend gatherings where we can actually get into some of these questions and dig deep, while still, not having to commit to, a couple of weeks of your time frame. So they're the things that as a world schooling family are driving our world schooling experiences.
And for people who want more information, where can we find you online?
We've got our At Home in the World retreats, or At Home in World family retreats. They can find us through there. That's at homeintheworldretreats.com. But also we're also creating these experiences where we can actually get together, for a weekend and learn some things together. We've called those our At Home in the World weekends. And the whole idea of this is, to be at home with yourself, at home with your family, and at home in the world, no matter where you are and what and how you're living. And we're also shortly, we're working on, towards the end of the year, we're going to be launching our family membership site, which is going to be directed at families who are still living in this sedentary lifestyle at home and are really starting to ask these questions, as to how we can live a deeper, closer, more meaningful connection, and the things that we do on a daily basis, how is that going to serve us as a family and keep us all engaged together? So that's through our site called Muesli. We've called it Muesli, which is spelled MUSELEY, so www.muesli.com. It's just in its inceptive phase at the moment, but that is it's intended to be the muse for your family. So how can we bring all of the inspiration, topics, tools, resources, and interactive engagements and experiences both in the online world and in the face-to-face world that you can apply on a daily basis in your family. Oh yeah, there's also Lolikai, our son, is still doing his travel concierge services for families that don't that need that extra help or assistance and want to find the most cost-effective way, and that's destinatortravel.com. And Leah's blog, where she's got her stories and everything, is Dreamtime Traveller, so they can find us there. And her book is dawnoftheguardian.com. So they're all the various places you can find us online. But yeah, just drop us a line. If any of, I'm speaking to all the families that are out there at the moment, especially ones who haven't yet made that leap. Please know that we're really accessible. You can get in contact with us anytime, through any of those sites and even through the Worldschooling Central site here. Drop us a line and we're more than happy to have that chat.
And finally, what would you say to someone who is brand new and considering world schooling?
Get out there. I'd say just get out there. For $10,000 on a family of 4, you could spend 6 months of your year in Asia or even in the south of Europe, or, some really, really exciting places that you may think, you can't afford. But the truth of the matter is you can utilize what you've got, and there are far more cost-effective places to live in the world and experience them. Worldschooling Central is a fantastic resource for this. Get to know some of the families that have been doing it. A lot of families will be very happy to talk to you, to listen to what it is that you're going through and hear what is needed by you, and just take that opportunity to share some of the experiences.
You can create the life you want to live.
Yeah, start asking the questions that you are called to ask, and you will and just follow that path. The answers, you will find the answers. So I suppose in summing up, get out there, start today. Don't let anything hold you back.
To find out more and connect with the Kaponay family, check out the links to their websites below the video. And if you'd like to be featured on Worldschooling Spotlight, visit www.worldschoolingcentral.com.